You
Hafsat
can't
stood
keep
frozen
avoiding
in the
this.
center of Seoul's most
This
exclusive
ends now.
lounge, her black and white uniform suddenly feeling like a target painted on her back. The crystal tray trembled in her grip as Joyce Billy's diamond-ringed finger pointed at her like a loaded gun. The pregnant socialite's voice cut through champagne-soaked air. "Fire her!" Security moved. Guests whispered. Hafsat's breath caught. After surviving Lagos's streets, her mother's medical bills, years of invisible labor in rooms full of people who never saw her face, she would lose everything because a rich woman decided she existed. But someone saw her. Don Montano rose from the shadows like smoke, taking human form. Rain-soaked white shirt clinging to his frame, tattoos crawling up his neck, eyes black and empty as execution chambers. Seoul's most feared mafia boss. The man politicians whispered about. The nightmare parents used to scare children. He stepped between Hafsat and the advancing guards. Step away. The room died. Phones lifted. Cameras flashed. Joyce stumbled backward, her silk dress billowing around her pregnant belly like a parachute that wouldn't open. And in that frozen moment, Hafsat didn't know she'd just signed a contract, written in scandal, survival, and something far more dangerous than either. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm responding to everyone. Click subscribe, like this video. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want me to miss them. Now let's begin. The alarm didn't go off because Hafsat couldn't afford to replace the battery. She woke at 4:47 a.m. the way her body had learned to wake, 3 minutes before the bus that could get her to work on time, 13 minutes before the one that would make her late. The Seoul winter pressed against the single-pane window of her shoebox room in Itaewon, frost-forming patterns that looked like the baobab trees back home in Lagos. She didn't have time to notice. Her uniform hung on a wire hanger, hooked to a nail someone had hammered into the wall before she'd arrived. White shirt, black vest, the striped apron that marked her as service class in a city built on hierarchy. She'd hand-washed it last night in the communal bathroom sink, hung it near the space heaters she could only afford to run for 30 minutes before bed. It was still damp. She put it on anyway. The face in the cracked mirror above the sink wasn't the one she remembered from 2 years ago. That Hafsat had smiled more, believed in things. This one had learned to make herself smaller, quieter, functionally invisible. In luxury spaces, invisibility was armor. The guests at Eclipse Lounge didn't want to see their servers as human. They wanted smooth service, silent efficiency, the illusion that champagne refilled itself and appetizers materialized through magic, rather than the exhausted hands of women who couldn't afford to eat what they served. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother in Lagos, sent 7 hours ago when it was still yesterday there. "Hafsat, the hospital is asking again. They say if we don't pay by Friday." She didn't finish reading. She already knew how that sentence ended. Her mother had diabetes. Her younger brother Malik needed school fees. Her father had disappeared into Lagos traffic 3 years ago, the way fathers sometimes did when bills became heavier than love. Hafsat sent money every month, most of her salary converted to naira and wired through services that charged fees she couldn't afford not to pay. She typed back, "I'm working on it." Don't worry. The lie tasted like every other lie she'd told to keep her family breathing. The bus was crowded with other invisible people. Delivery drivers, cleaning staff, security guards in wrinkled uniforms. They all had the same exhausted eyes, the same careful posture of people who'd learned that taking up too much space was dangerous. Hafsat stood near the back, gripping the overhead rail as the bus lurched through Seoul's pre-dawn streets. Outside, the city glittered like a promise it had never intended to keep. Neon signs reflected off rain-slicked pavement. Luxury cars idled at red lights, their leather interiors worth more than she'd earned in 5 years. She'd come to Seoul chasing a different story. Teaching English. Graduate school maybe. A life that felt larger than survival. But her visa had complications. Her credentials didn't transfer the way the agency had promised. And suddenly she was 26 years old and wiping lipstick stains off champagne flutes, while couples spent her yearly salary on a single bottle of wine. Eclipse Lounge occupied the top floor of a building in Gangnam, the kind of place that required 3 forms of ID just to enter the lobby. Hafsat arrived at 5:43 a.m., changed into her work shoes in the staff room that smelled like bleach and desperation, and started her shift the way she started every shift, by making herself disappear. "Hafsat." Manager Kim didn't look up from his tablet. "VIP section tonight. Private party. High-profile guests." "No mistakes." "Yes, Manager Kim." "And smile more. You always look so serious." She smiled. The smile that didn't reach her eyes. The one that made rich people comfortable because it confirmed she existed only to serve them. Manager Kim nodded, satisfied, and walked away. The other servers filtered in. Most were Korean, a few were from other parts of Asia. Hafsat was the only black woman on staff, which meant she carried an additional weight. The unspoken expectation that any mistake she made would confirm whatever prejudices already existed in the minds of guests who'd never seen someone who looked like her as anything other than exotic or threatening or both. She polished glassware until it caught light like diamonds, arranged napkins into geometric shapes, memorized the night's specialty cocktail menu in Korean, English, and the broken Chinese she'd taught herself from YouTube videos. By the time the first guests arrived at 8 p.m., Hafsat had transformed herself into the perfect ghost, efficient, silent, unseen. She didn't know that in 6 hours, a pregnant woman in silk would try to destroy her. She didn't know a mafia boss was already sitting in the shadows, watching. She only knew that survival meant making it through one more shift without breaking. So she smiled her invisible smile, lifted her tray, and stepped into the glittering darkness of other people's luxury. The champagne glass shattered before Hafsat even understood what was happening. One moment she was refilling water glasses at table 7, moving through the choreographed invisibility she'd perfected over 2 years. The next, crystal exploded against the marble floor 3 inches from her feet, champagne splashing across her ankles like accusation. "You!" The voice cut through the lounge's carefully curated atmosphere. The low jazz, the murmured conversations, the gentle clink of silverware against porcelain. Every head turned. Hafsat's stomach dropped. Joyce Billy stood in the center of the VIP section, like a queen surveying conquered territory, pregnant, furious, dressed in burgundy silk that probably cost more than Hafsat's entire year of rent. Diamonds caught the low lighting at her throat, her wrists, her ears. Her belly curved beneath the fabric like an accusation of its own. "You ignored me." Joyce's voice climbed higher. "I've been trying to get your attention for 10 minutes, and you walked right past me like I'm nobody." Hafsat's mouth went dry. She searched her memory frantically. Had she walked past table 12? She'd been focused on the water service, following the rotation manager Kim had assigned. Table 12 wasn't even in her section. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't." "Don't lie to me." Joyce stepped closer. The other guests had gone silent now, phones emerging from designer purses and suit pockets. This was content. This was drama. This was something to share with followers who fed on other people's humiliation. "Do you know who I am?" Hafsat did know. Everyone who worked at Eclipse knew the regulars, especially the dangerous ones. Joyce Billy, old money, family connections to half the chaebols in Seoul, engaged to someone important until recently, now pregnant and spiraling through the city's elite spaces like a beautiful hurricane. "Yes, ma'am. I apologize if..." "If?" Joyce laughed, sharp and brittle. "There's no if. You saw me. You deliberately ignored me. What, you think because you're working here you can disrespect the guests? You think your little uniform gives you permission to be rude?" Heat crawled up Hafsat's neck. Every eye in the lounge pressed against her skin. She could feel them calculating, judging, recording. The other servers had frozen mid-service, watching to see how this would play out, grateful it wasn't them. "I sincerely apologize, ma'am. It wasn't intentional. If you'd like, I can." "I don't want anything from you." Joyce's hand went to her belly, protective, performative. "Except for you to be fired." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Manager Kim materialized from somewhere, his professional smile already in place, though Hafsat could see the panic beneath it. Joyce Billy's family could make problems disappear. They could also make people disappear. "Miss Billy, I'm so sorry for any inconvenience. Please, let me handle this personally." "Fire her." Joyce's voice had gone cold now, controlled. Somehow that was worse than the screaming. "Right now. I want her escorted out." "Miss Billy, perhaps we could." "Are you refusing me?" Joyce turned her fury on Manager Kim, and Hafsat watched him fold like paper. "Should I call your owner? Should I tell him that Eclipse Lounge employs staff who disrespect pregnant women? Who make guests feel unsafe?" Unsafe. The word was chosen carefully, precisely. In Seoul's service industry, that word could end careers. Manager Kim's face transformed into something harder. When he looked at Hafsat, she saw her own future reflected in his eyes. "Hafsat, my office." "Now." "But I didn't." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Desperate. "I was assigned to Section 3. I never even..." "Don't make this worse." Manager Kim's voice dropped to a hiss. "Apologize and go." Hafsat's hands trembled around the empty water pitcher she still held. This job was everything. The visa sponsorship. The salary that kept her mother's insulin coming. The promise that if she worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, made herself useful enough, she could survive in this city that had never wanted her. She turned to Joyce, the apology forming on her lips even though it burned. "She's not going anywhere." The voice came from the shadows near the back wall, where the private booths curved into darkness. Deep. Male. Carrying the kind of authority that didn't need to be loud. A man stood up. The entire lounge seemed to inhale at once. Don Montano emerged from the darkness, like something that had been waiting there all along. His white shirt was damp, from rain. Hafsat would learn later, from standing outside for an hour before entering because he hated crowded spaces. Tattoos crawled up his neck, disappearing into his collar. His hair fell across eyes that should have been empty but somehow burned. He walked toward them with the terrible calm of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Joyce went pale. Dawn, step away from her. And that's when Hafsat realized she wasn't breathing. The space between Don Montano and the rest of the room felt like a country with closed borders. He moved through Eclipse Lounge the way apex predators moved, unhurried, certain, aware that everything else was prey. Hafsat watched him close the distance between his booth and where she stood frozen, and some animal part of her brain cataloged details her conscious mind couldn't process. The way other guests shifted in their seats, angling away from his path. The security guard near the bar, whose hand moved instinctively toward his radio, then stopped, as if remembering that calling for backup against Don Montano was like calling for backup against a tsunami. Manager Kim had gone absolutely still, his professional smile now a rigid mask barely containing terror. Don stopped 3 feet from Hafsat, close enough that she could smell rain and expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Cigarette smoke, maybe, or the particular scent of violence that clung to certain men like a second skin. I said step away from her. He wasn't looking at Manager Kim. His eyes were locked on Joyce, and there was something in his expression that Hafsat couldn't name. History. Anger. Something that tasted like recognition and regret, tangled together. Joyce's perfect composure cracked at the edges. This doesn't concern you. Everything in this room concerns me. Don's voice dropped lower, quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. You're making a scene. You're upsetting my evening. And you're trying to destroy someone who did nothing wrong. You don't know what she... I've been sitting here for 45 minutes. Don finally moved his gaze, scanning the frozen crowd of guests with their phones out, their faces bright, with the particular excitement of people watching powerful people destroy each other. I watched her work. She never came near your table. You invented this. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Joyce's hand tightened on her belly. How dare you? How dare I? Something dangerous flickered across Don's face. Should we talk about daring, Joyce? Here? Now? With all these cameras? Hafsat watched Joyce's expression cycle through emotions too fast to track. Rage, fear, something that looked almost like grief. Then she seemed to remember where she was, who was watching. She pulled herself together with visible effort, lifting her chin. Fine. Her voice shook slightly. Defend your little waitress. Let everyone see what you really are. She turned and walked toward the exit, her silk dress flowing behind her like blood and water. Her entourage scrambled to follow, 3 women in designer clothes, 2 men in suits who looked like lawyers or bodyguards or both. The lounge door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then the whispers started. Did you see? Don Montano just. Who is she? Joyce, Billy, and Don. I thought they... Are you getting this? Are you recording? Hafsat became aware that at least 15 phones were pointed in her direction. At her face. At Don, standing beside her like a wall between her and the world. This moment was already uploading. Already captioned, already spinning into narrative across platforms she didn't even use. Manager Kim found his voice, though it came out strangled. Mr. Montano, I apologize for the disturbance. We'll handle this matter internally. You'll handle nothing. Don finally looked at Manager Kim, and Hafsat watched her manager shrink like something left too long in the sun. Hafsat keeps her job. If she doesn't, I make a phone call. You know which one. Manager Kim nodded so quickly, his head looked like it might detach. Don turned then, and Hafsat found herself staring directly into eyes that should have been brown but looked almost black in the low lighting. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 35, though violence aged people in ways that didn't show in wrinkles. The tattoos on his neck were geometric patterns that reminded her of Korean traditional art, twisted into something sharper. Are you hurt? His voice was different now. Quieter, almost gentle. Hafsat shook her head, not trusting her voice. Good. He glanced at the phone still recording, and his jaw tightened. This is going to get complicated. For both of us. Then he walked back to his booth, picked up a black jacket from the leather seat, and left through the back exit that only VIP guests knew existed. The silence lasted another 5 seconds. Then the lounge exploded into noise. Everyone talking at once, phones pressed to ears, fingers flying across screens. Hafsat stood in the center of it all, still holding the empty water pitcher. and understood with perfect clarity that her life as she'd known it had just ended. By the time she made it to the staff room 2 hours later, the video had been viewed 3 million times. The caption read, "Korean Mafia King saves mysterious black woman, secret relationship exposed?" Hafsat sat on the bench beneath the flickering fluorescent light and finally let herself shake. Hafsat was fired at 6:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours after Don Montano had walked out of Eclipse Lounge. Manager Kim delivered the news in his office with the door closed, his voice professionally sympathetic in the way that meant he'd practiced this speech before. "It's not personal. The ownership feels that given the media attention, it's best if we part ways. We'll provide 2 weeks severance and a neutral reference." 2 weeks severance. Hafsat calculated automatically. Not enough for next month's rent, not enough for her mother's medication, not enough for anything except maybe a plane ticket back to Lagos and the admission that she'd failed. She cleaned out her locker in silence. The other servers avoided eye contact, grateful again that the hammer had fallen on someone else. Her phone had died sometime around 3 a.m. from the constant notifications. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize, friend requests from strangers, news outlets asking for comments on her relationship with Don Montano. She'd stopped reading after the first 50. The winter air hit her like a slap when she stepped outside. Seoul in January didn't forgive weakness. She stood on the sidewalk in her civilian clothes, jeans with a hole in the knee, a coat too thin for the weather, and tried to figure out which direction failure looked like. A black car pulled up to the curb. Mercedes. Tinted windows. The kind of vehicle that cost more than her entire bloodline had ever earned combined. The back door opened. "Get in." A woman's voice. Korean accent, but the English was perfect. "We need to talk." Every instinct Hafsat had developed on Lagos streets screamed at her to run. But her feet moved toward the car anyway. Because what did she have left to protect? Her ruined reputation? Her terminated job? The viral video that had turned her into a hashtag? The woman inside wore a charcoal suit that looked surgically attached to her body. Hair pulled back so tight, it could have been a facelift. Eyes that calculated value the way sharks calculated blood in water. She was maybe 40, maybe 60. Wealth preserved people in ways that made age irrelevant. "I'm Choi Min-seo. I handle Mr. Montano's public affairs." She said it like she was announcing she handled nuclear waste disposal. Same level of danger, same careful protocols. "You're Hafsat Baliawa, 26. Nigerian. Work visa expires in 4 months. Mother with diabetes in Lagos. Younger brother in secondary school. You send home approximately 60% of your salary every month, which means you're currently 3 weeks away from complete financial collapse." Hafsat's stomach turned to ice. "How do you? It's my job to know." Choi Min-seo's expression didn't change. The video from last night has 17 million views. Korean media is calling it a romance. International outlets are writing think pieces about interracial relationships and mafia redemption arcs. Don Montano's approval rating. Yes, he has an approval rating. Went up 14 points overnight. People like the idea of him protecting someone powerless. "I don't understand what this has to do with. We want to hire you." Choi Min-seo pulled out a tablet, swiped through screens of data that moved too fast for Hafsat to read. "Mr. Montano has an image problem. He's feared, but fear only gets you so far in modern Seoul. We need him humanized. Softened." The viral video gave us an opportunity we didn't know we needed. The car was moving now, gliding through traffic, with the smooth immunity of vehicles that cost more than most people's houses. Hafsat watched the city slide past, the neon signs, the crowded sidewalks, the life she'd been trying to build dissolving in the rearview mirror. "You want me to pretend to date him? We want you to be his companion. Attend events, be photographed. Convince Seoul that Don Montano is capable of protecting something other than territory." Choi Min-seo finally looked at her directly. "In return, we pay you 5 million won per month. We provide housing, security, a work visa extension, and when this arrangement ends, 6 months, maybe a year, we provide a severance package that sets you up anywhere in the world." 5 million won. Hafsat did the math automatically. Almost $4,000. More money than she'd ever made in her life. Enough to save her mother, pay for Malik's school, maybe even save something for herself. "Why me? Because the internet already chose you." Choi Min-seo's voice was pragmatic, borderline cruel. "You're already in the story. We're just making it official." The car stopped outside a building Hafsat recognized from Korean dramas, luxury apartments in Hanam-dong where celebrities lived, where rent started at numbers she couldn't conceptualize. Through the window she could see marble lobbies and doormen in uniforms nicer than anything she owned. This would be your residence. Private floor. Full security. You'd have 48 hours to decide but given your visa situation and current employment status, I'd recommend deciding now. Choi Min-seo produced a contract. Thick. Official. The kind of document that changed lives or ended them. Hafsat thought about her mother's last message. The hospital asking again. Friday's deadline. She thought about Malik's school fees and the room she'd been evicted from once already. She thought about Lagos and what waited for her there. Nothing. The same nothing she'd left behind. Does he know about this? Her voice sounded strange. Distant. Like it belonged to someone else. Mr. Montano authorized the offer. Whether he likes it is irrelevant. Hafsat took the pen. Her hand shook as she signed her name on the line that transformed her from unemployed waitress to purchased companion. The ink was still wet when Choi Min-seo smiled for the first time. A sharp, satisfied expression that didn't reach her eyes. Welcome to Don Montano's life. Try not to die. The apartment had more rooms than Hafsat could justify. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with heated floors that felt like a fantasy against her winter raw feet. A kitchen with appliances she didn't know how to operate, all gleaming chrome and touchscreens that responded to Korean voice commands. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Hanam-dong, where the Han River curved through Seoul like a promise the city had kept to everyone except her. She stood in the living room at 9 p.m. on her first night, surrounded by furniture that cost more than her education, and felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her shoebox room in Itaewon. At least there, poverty had been honest. This luxury was a costume she was wearing for an audience she couldn't see. Her phone, the new one Choi Min-seo had provided, Korean model, unlimited data, buzzed against the marble counter. A message from a number saved as DM. Security will brief you tomorrow at 10. Photo shoot at 2. Dinner event at 8. Choi will send details. No greeting. No question about whether she'd settled in. Just instructions. As if she was an asset being deployed rather than a person who'd signed away 6 months of her life. She typed back, okay, then deleted it and wrote, understood. Then deleted that too and just sent a thumbs up emoji, because what was the appropriate response when a mafia boss texted you orders in your luxury prison? The apartment came with a stylist who arrived at 7 a.m. like an invasion force. 3 assistants, racks of clothing, makeup cases that opened like surgical kits. The woman in charge introduced herself as Yuna and immediately began circling Hafsat like a predator assessing prey. Good bone structure. Skin is excellent. We can work with this. Hair needs treatment, but the length is perfect. Height is good. You photograph well. I don't know. You will. Yuna's smile was professional, empty. By the time we're done, you'll know exactly which angles make you look mysterious, which make you look vulnerable, which make Don Montano look human. The transformation took 4 hours. Hair treatment, facial, full body exfoliation that felt like punishment. Yuna's team worked with the efficient silence of people who'd done this before, taken ordinary women, and manufactured them into accessories for powerful men. When they finally let Hafsat look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wore a cream silk blouse that probably cost 3 months of her old salary, tailored black pants that made her legs look impossibly long, hair styled in loose waves that looked effortless but had required 45 minutes of careful engineering, makeup that enhanced without announcing itself, the kind of beauty that whispered instead of screamed. Perfect. Yuna stepped back, admiring her work. You look like someone Don Montano would protect. Someone worth the risk. The photo shoot happened in the apartment. A photographer with an assistant and lighting equipment that turned the living room into a film set. They posed her by the windows, on the couch, standing in the kitchen with a wine glass she wasn't allowed to actually drink from. Look thoughtful. No, less sad. Thoughtful. Like you're remembering something beautiful. Good. Now turn slightly. We want your profile. Perfect. Hold that. Click, click, click. She was a product being packaged for consumption. Don Montano arrived at 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes before they were supposed to leave for dinner. Hafsat heard him before she saw him. The apartment door opening, security murmuring greetings, footsteps that were somehow both quiet and heavy. When he appeared in the living room doorway, she was struck again by how much space he occupied without trying. He'd changed from the rain-soaked white shirt into a black suit that looked like it had been designed specifically to make him more dangerous. Hair pushed back, tattoos hidden beneath collar and cuffs, but the violence in his eyes remained unfiltered. He looked at her for 3 seconds that felt like hours. They did a good job. His voice was flat, assessment without warmth. You look the part. What part is that? Someone I'd choose. He moved past her toward the kitchen, poured himself water from the filtered dispenser. The dinner tonight is a charity event. Art auction. Old money pretending to care about poor people. We'll arrive together, stay 90 minutes, let them take photos. You don't have to talk much. Just stand next to me and look like you want to be there. And if I don't want to be there, He turned, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that she'd said it out loud. Then you're a better actor than I thought. Because I saw you sign that contract, Hafsat. You wanted this. I wanted to survive. Same thing. He set down the glass. The car leaves in 10 minutes. Choi sent you a briefing document about tonight's guests. Read it. Some of them are dangerous. Most of them are connected. All of them will be watching us. He started to leave, then stopped in the doorway. Joyce will be there. Hafsat's stomach dropped. What? The pregnant woman from the lounge. She's on the guest list. Her family sponsors the event. Dawn's expression was unreadable. She'll try to make a scene. Let her. We need the drama. Choi wants the story to build. You didn't think to mention this before. I'm mentioning it now. He looked at her with something that might have been sympathy if Mafia bosses were capable of such things. Welcome to the performance. Try to remember your lines. Then he was gone. And Hafsat was alone with the knowledge that in 40 minutes, she'd have to face the woman who'd tried to destroy her while pretending to be the girlfriend of Seoul's most feared criminal. She looked at herself in the mirror again. The woman staring back looked confident, expensive, untouchable. She was none of those things. But she was about to pretend she was. The third event was when Hafsat realized she'd stopped pretending. It happened at a gallery opening in Gangnam, surrounded by abstract sculptures that looked like expensive mistakes and champagne that tasted like regret. Don stood beside her with his hand resting at the small of her back, light enough to be appropriate, firm enough to signal ownership. They'd done this 6 times now. 6 dinners, 3 galas, 2 private parties where Seoul's elite circled them like sharks sensing blood. Each appearance followed the same choreography. Arrive together, let the cameras catch them, stand close enough that speculation looked like confirmation. Dawn would lean in occasionally, whisper something that made her smile, usually instructions disguised as intimacy. The man in the gray suit works for the prosecutor's office. Don't look at him directly. The woman by the bar is a journalist. She'll try to corner you in the bathroom. But tonight, when he leaned close and said, "You're doing well," it didn't sound like instruction. It sounded like he meant it. "I'm getting good at lying," she whispered back. His hand tightened fractionally against her back. "So am I." The problem started 3 weeks in, during a fitting for a charity gala. The stylist had brought a red dress, the kind of red that didn't apologize, that demanded attention and took no prisoners. When Hafsat emerged from the bedroom, Dawn looked up from his phone and went completely still. "Too much?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious under his stare. "No." His voice was rough. "It's perfect. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "It's fine. Wear that one." But she'd seen something flicker across his face before he locked it down. Recognition. Want. The same thing she'd been feeling when he touched her in public, when his hand lingered a second too long, when he looked at her like she was a person instead of a contract. They'd started talking. Real talking, not the practiced small talk for cameras. It began accidentally one night when his driver got stuck in traffic, and they had 40 minutes alone in the back of the Mercedes. She'd asked about the tattoos on his neck, geometric patterns she'd been staring at for weeks. Traditional Korean. Tiger stripes mixed with chrysanthemums. He turned his head slightly, letting her see. "My grandmother's idea. She said if I was going to be a monster, I should at least be a beautiful one." "Are you? A monster?" "Yes, no hesitation, but I'm trying to be a useful one." She told him about Lagos then, about her father leaving, about carrying water 3 kilometers every morning before school, about the specific shame of being smart enough to want more but poor enough that wanting felt like punishment. He'd listened without interrupting, without offering hollow comfort, and when she finished he'd said, "Your family is lucky to have you." It was the kindness that made it dangerous. The boundaries blurred further during a weekend trip to Jeju Island, a romantic getaway staged for media consumption. Separate hotel rooms, of course, but connected by an interior door that stayed unlocked. They'd walked along the beach at sunset for the photographers hiding in the rocks, and when Dawn took her hand, she'd forgotten it was performance. "This would be easier if I didn't like you," he said quietly, staring at the ocean. "Like me or like having me around?" "Both." He turned to face her, and the sunset caught his eyes, turning them amber instead of black. "Choi's contract expires in 4 months. You'll get your money. You can leave. Build whatever life you want, anywhere in the world. That's the plan." Good. But he didn't sound like it was good. He sounded like something was breaking. "Because this isn't real, Hafsat. No matter how real it feels." She should have agreed, should have reinforced the boundary. Instead she asked, "Does it feel real to you?" He didn't answer, just pulled her closer as the cameras clicked in the distance, and she couldn't tell anymore if the way her heart raced was performance or truth. Joyce appeared at a private dinner 2 days later. ambushing them in a restaurant where reservations required 3 months' notice and connections that made politicians nervous. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly preceding her like an accusation. 2 men flanked her, bodyguards or lawyers, hard to tell the difference in her world. She walked directly to their table and placed both hands flat on the white tablecloth. "We need to talk, all 3 of us, about what happens when the baby comes." Dawn's face went glacial. "Not here." "Yes, here." Joyce's voice was steady, despite the tears forming in her eyes. "Because you won't return my calls, and she looked at Hafsat with something between hatred and desperation. "Needs to know what she's really signed up for." Hafsat felt Dawn tense beside her, felt the danger radiating off him like heat. But Joyce didn't back down. "Tell her, Dawn. Tell her who the father really is. Tell her why you can't ever let me go, no matter how many pretty distractions you parade around Seoul." The restaurant had gone quiet, every table watching, every phone recording. Dawn stood slowly, and Hafsat watched him transform into something colder than she'd ever seen. The car. Now. He pulled Hafsat to her feet, his grip on her arm just shy of painful. "We're leaving." As they moved toward the exit, Joyce called after them, her voice breaking. 4 months, Dawn. That's all the time you have before everything you've built comes crashing down, and she'll be right there in the rubble with you." In the car, Dawn's hands shook. Hafsat reached over and took one of them, threading their fingers together. He didn't pull away. The call came at 2:34 a.m., dragging Hafsat from the first decent sleep she'd had in weeks. Dawn's voice on the other end was controlled in that particular way that meant everything was falling apart. "Get dressed. We need to go to Seoul National Hospital." Joyce collapsed. "What happened?" "I don't know yet." Her mother called. "The press is already there." A pause. "This is going to look bad. Us showing up together. But if I don't go, I'll be ready in 10 minutes. She heard him exhale, something like relief. "Thank you." The hospital's VIP entrance was surrounded by photographers despite the hour. Apparently someone had tipped them off that Don Montano was coming. Someone who understood that a Mafia boss rushing to his pregnant ex-fiancé's bedside made for excellent content. Flashbulbs exploded as they emerged from the Mercedes. Dawn's hand found Hafsat's automatically now. No longer performance but reflex. Security cleared a path through the cameras. Questions shouted in Korean, in English. "Mr. Montano, is the baby yours? How does your girlfriend feel about this? Are you still in love with Joyce Billy?" They didn't answer. Just moved through the chaos into the sterile quiet of the hospital corridor. Joyce's mother waited outside the private room. Minhee Billy was 60 and looked 40, preserved by wealth and rage in equal measure. When she saw Dawn, her expression curdled into something that made Hafsat want to step backward. "You have some nerve showing up here." Minhee's English was British accented, finishing school perfect. "Haven't you done enough damage?" "How is she?" Dawn's voice was flat, giving nothing away. "How do you think she is?" 7 months pregnant, collapsing from stress, blood pressure through the ceiling. Minhee's gaze slid to Hafsat like a blade. "And you bring her here to taunt my daughter while she's..." "Mrs. Billy." Choi Min-seo materialized from somewhere, immaculate despite the hour in a navy suit that looked like armor. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "The press." "I don't care about the press." But Minhee's voice dropped anyway, aware that hospital walls had ears, and those ears often came with recording devices. "My daughter is in there fighting for her baby's life because of the stress he caused by parading around with." The door to Joyce's room opened. "I'm sorry." Joyce was crying now, makeup running down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Dawn. But Jinho found out I was going to tell you the truth. He's been threatening me. He says if I don't convince you to agree to the port merger, he'll..." She looked at Hafsat suddenly. "That's why I went after her at Eclipse. He told me to. He said embarrassing you publicly would give him leverage." The room had gone cold. "Jinho has been using you to manipulate me." Dawn's voice was death. "And you let him." "I didn't have a choice." Joyce's machine screamed as her blood pressure spiked. "He has photos, Dawn, of things I did, things that would destroy my family." He said. The door burst open. The doctor rushed in, nurses behind him. "Everyone out. Now." "Her BP is critical." Dawn didn't move. His eyes were locked on Joyce, and Hafsat couldn't read his expression anymore. "Dawn." Hafsat touched his arm gently. "We should go." He let her pull him backward, out of the room, into the corridor where Minhee stood frozen, having heard everything through the open door. Choi was already on her phone, voice clipped and urgent. "We have a situation. Kang Jinho." "Yes, that one. Mobilize security. Lock down all properties. I want surveillance on his locations within the hour." Dawn walked past them all, down the corridor toward the exit. Hafsat followed, unsure if she should. knowing she couldn't leave him alone. Outside, dawn was breaking over Seoul. The photographers had multiplied, sensing bigger news. Dawn stopped at the Mercedes, turned to face Hafsat. In the early light, he looked exhausted and dangerous, and something else she couldn't name. You should leave. Today. I'll have Choi arrange it. Full payment, new identity if you want it. Because this, he gestured vaguely at the hospital, at Seoul, at everything, is about to become a war zone. Hafsat surprised herself by saying, no. Hafsat, I signed a contract. 6 months. We still have time left. The contract doesn't matter anymore. You heard Joyce. Jinho is coming after me. After everyone around me. Then I guess, Hafsat said quietly, you shouldn't face him alone. The message arrived 3 days after Joyce's confession, buried in Hafsat's Instagram DMs between sponsorship offers and marriage proposals from strangers who thought being Don Montano's girlfriend made her available for purchase. Nice life you're living now. Your family back in Lagos must be so proud. The profile had no photo, no posts, just a username that was random letters and numbers. Hafsat almost deleted it. Then the second message came through. Does Malik still walk home from school alone? That's dangerous. Anything could happen to a 14-year-old boy in Lagos traffic. Her blood turned to ice. The third message contained a photo. Her brother, taken yesterday based on his school uniform, walking down a street she recognized. The angle suggested someone had been following him. Close enough to touch. We should talk. Just you and me. For old time's sake. The last message was a phone number with a Nigerian country code. Hafsat's hands shook as she showed Don the messages. They were in his actual apartment. Not the staged one in Hanam-dong, but his real residence in Pyeongchang-dong, where he'd brought her after the hospital when it became clear that keeping her in the public apartment was too dangerous. This place was fortress disguised as home. Reinforced walls, security systems that would make embassies jealous, windows that could stop bullets. Don's face went dark as he scrolled through the messages. Who is this? I think, Hafsat's voice caught. I think it's Emmanuel. My ex, from Lagos. Tell me. So she did. The whole ugly story she tried to forget. Emmanuel Okonkwo. Charming, ambitious, the kind of man who knew how to make women feel chosen until they realized they'd been marked instead. They'd dated for 2 years. He talked about marriage, about building something together. Then she discovered he was running a romance scam, targeting older European women, using photos of them together to catfish victims across 3 continents. When she confronted him, he'd threatened her. Said if she went to the police, he'd make sure everyone in her neighborhood knew her family's business. In Lagos, reputation was currency, and Emmanuel knew exactly how to spend it. She'd left for Seoul 2 months later. Thought she'd escaped. He must have seen the videos. Realized I'm with you now. Hafsat wrapped her arms around herself. He thinks I have money. Or that you do. He's using my family as leverage. Don was already texting someone, his jaw set in that way that meant violence was being calculated. Does your mother know about him? No. I never told her why I left. Don made a call, spoke rapid Korean, hung up. I have people in Lagos. Security consultants. They'll have eyes on your family within 3 hours. Your mother, your brother, they'll be protected. Don, I can't afford. You're not paying. His voice was sharp. Anyone who threatens you threatens me. That's how this works now. The words should have felt transactional. Instead, they felt like a promise. The situation with Kang Jin-ho was escalating in parallel. Don's organization had been preparing for war, consolidating allies, securing assets, moving money through channels that couldn't be frozen. Choi Min-seo had transformed from publicist into general, coordinating with lawyers, accountants, and men with titles Hafsat didn't want to understand. Jin-ho's been planning this for months, Choi explained during a briefing in Don's apartment. She spread documents across the dining table, like battle maps. The affair with Joyce was strategic. The pregnancy was insurance. He wanted leverage over you, Don. A child would have tied you to Joyce's family, given him access to their political connections. But the baby isn't mine. Don stared at the documents without seeing them, which means he lost his primary leverage. He's desperate now. Desperate men make mistakes. Choi pulled up something on her tablet. We've traced 3 attempts to bribe officials in your import businesses. 2 of your port managers received threats yesterday. And someone tried to access your financial records through a shell company registered in the Caymans. How bad is it? Hafsat asked. Choi looked at her with something almost like respect. Bad enough that we're moving everyone connected to Don into secure locations. His grandmother is already in a safe house in Jeju. His business partners are being rotated through protected properties. And you, she glanced at Don. She needs to disappear from public view completely. No. Don's voice was flat. That's what Jinho wants. To isolate me. Make me look weak. You'll look dead if he gets to her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Don's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression darkening with each second. When he hung up, he looked at Hafsat with something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. That was my contact in Lagos. Emmanuel Okonkwo isn't working alone. He's connected to a trafficking network that's been trying to establish operations in Seoul. They've been looking for a way into my organization for years. Hafsat felt the room tilt. What are you saying? I'm saying Emmanuel didn't just see you on the news and decide to blackmail you. Someone sent him. Someone who knew about your past, knew he could get to you. Don's hands curled into fists. Jinho is using your ex to threaten your family, hoping you'll pressure me to back down. He's using me as a weapon against you. Yes. The apartment's intercom buzzed, sharp, urgent. Don's head of security appeared on the screen, his face grim. Sir, we have a situation. Someone just delivered a package to the lobby. No return address. X-ray shows it's organic material. Don's jaw tightened. Bring it up, carefully. The package arrived in a blast containment case, opened by a bomb tech, wearing enough protective gear to survive a small explosion. Inside was something wrapped in black plastic. Don opened it. It was a chrysanthemum, the flower from his tattoos, from his grandmother's garden. But this one was dead, petals brown and brittle, stem broken. There was a note in Korean. Don read it, his face going absolutely white. What does it say? Hafsat whispered. He showed her. Choi translated. Beautiful monsters still bleed. Choose, your empire or everyone you've tried to protect. Don crumpled the note in his fist. When he looked at Hafsat, she saw the decision forming before he spoke it. I'm ending this. Tonight. Jinho wants a war, he'll get one. He turned to his head of security. Mobilize everyone. I want locations on all of Jinho's people within the hour. We move at midnight. Don, wait. Hafsat grabbed his arm. If you do this, if you go after him directly, there's no going back. You'll be exactly what they say you are. I already am what they say I am. His voice was quiet, resigned. I've been trying to be something different, something better. But Jinho's right about one thing. I'm still a monster. I just forgot for a while. He pulled away from her touch, started issuing orders to the security team gathering in the apartment. Hafsat stood in the center of the controlled chaos and realized that everything was about to change. The fake relationship, the staged appearances, the careful performance, none of it mattered anymore. This was real. The danger was real. And she had a choice to make. Run back to Lagos and the life she'd escaped, or stay beside a man about to start a war. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Emmanuel. TikTok. Hafsat. Malik leaves school at 3 p.m. every day. Such a predictable schedule. She looked at Don coordinating his people, transforming into the Mafia boss Soul whispered about in fear. Then she made her decision. Don. Her voice cut through the noise. I'm not leaving. Whatever you're planning, I'm part of it now. Use me. The plan was insane, which meant it might actually work. Hafsat would be the bait. She stood in Don's war room, because that's what his dining room had become. Maps and surveillance photos covering every surface, and listened to Choi outline how they'd use her to draw out both Emmanuel and Kang Jinho. A public appearance. One final performance. Hafsat alone at a charity gala, visibly without Don's protection, appearing vulnerable enough that Jinho's people would make their move. They'll try to grab you. Choi's voice was clinical, discussing Hafsat's potential kidnapping the way someone might discuss traffic routes, probably in the parking garage. We'll have a full team in position, but there will be a window, 30 seconds, maybe 40, where you'll be exposed. And if something goes wrong? Hafsat asked. Then you'll be leverage against Don. They'll use you to force him to surrender territory, assets, possibly his life. Choi met her eyes without flinching. This is a real risk. You can still walk away. Hafsat looked at Don. He stood by the window, backlit by Soul's nightlights, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. He'd barely spoken since agreeing to let her be part of this. Now he turned, and his expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. Don't do this. His voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. Please, I'll find another way. There is no other way. Jinho thinks I'm your weakness. Let's prove him right. You are my weakness. The words came out strangled. That's the problem. Somewhere between the fake appearances and the staged photos, you became... He stopped, jaw working. This was supposed to be temporary. A contract. You were supposed to be safe. Hafsat crossed to him, aware that Choi and the security team were watching. Aware that this moment was real in a way none of their public performances had been. She took his hand, felt him grip back like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. I stopped feeling safe the moment I signed that contract. But I also stopped feeling invisible. She squeezed his hand. In Lagos, in that lounge, I was someone people looked through. You saw me, Don. You stepped between me and security, and you saw me. So now I'm choosing to see you back, all of you, even the monster parts. Something broke in his expression. He pulled her close, not for cameras, not for performance, just because he needed to. His forehead rested against hers, and she felt him trembling. If anything happens to you, it won't. Because you'll be watching. You're always watching. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. This is real now, isn't it? Whatever this is between us. It's been real since Jeju Island. Maybe before. His hand came up to cup her face. I'm in love with you, Hafsat. Which is the worst possible timing, and the most dangerous thing I could admit, but I'm done pretending. Good. She smiled, and it felt like the first real smile in months. Because I'm in love with you too, and I'm terrified, and I'm still doing this. He kissed her then, not for show, not for the story they were selling the world. Just them, in a room full of battle plans, claiming something real in the middle of manufactured chaos. When they broke apart, Choi was studiously examining her tablet, but Hafsat caught the ghost of a smile on the older woman's face. The gala was in 3 hours. They dressed her in emerald silk, the kind of dress that made her look expensive and exposed. Minimal security visible, just one bodyguard, carefully chosen to look competent, but not insurmountable. Every detail designed to make Jinho's people think they could take her. Dawn's grandmother arrived an hour before Hafsat was supposed to leave. She was 83, barely 5 feet tall, with white hair pinned in a traditional style and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. She looked at Hafsat the way generals assess terrain. So you're the one who made my grandson remember he's human. Her English was accented but perfect. Good. He was becoming too much like his father. Cold. Calculating. Forgetting that power without heart is just violence. I'm not sure I made him remember anything, Hafsat said quietly. I think I just gave him a reason to stop hiding it. The old woman smiled, pulled something from her pocket. A jade pendant on a silk cord, the same chrysanthemum pattern from Don's tattoos. My husband gave this to me before he went to war. He said if I wore it, he'd always find his way home. She pressed it into Hafsat's palm. You wear it tonight. My grandson needs something to fight his way back to. Hafsat's throat tightened. What if I'm not enough? Child, you walked into a mafia boss's world with nothing but courage and a work visa. You're more than enough. You're exactly what he needs. She patted Hafsat's hand. Now go be brave. We'll handle the rest. The car ride to the gala was silent. Don sat across from her in the Mercedes, dressed in black, armed in ways she couldn't see but knew were there. His security team followed in 2 additional vehicles. Choi coordinated through an earpiece, her voice a steady stream of updates about Jinho's movements, Emmanuel's location, the dozens of moving pieces that could either save Hafsat or kill her. At a red light 2 blocks from the venue, Don leaned forward. Change of plans. You're not going in. Don, I can't do this. I can't use you as bait. I won't. His voice was ragged. We'll find another way. Jinho wants me. He can have me. But not you. Never you. Hafsat reached across the space between them. You don't get to protect me by sacrificing yourself. That's not how this works. We're in this together now. Equal partners. That means I get to choose the fire too. The light turned green. Don stared at her for 3 seconds that felt like forever. Then he nodded to the driver. Keep going. The gala entrance blazed with lights and cameras. Hafsat stepped out of the Mercedes alone, as planned. Her single bodyguard flanked her. Flashbulbs exploded. Questions shouted. Where's Don Montano? Are you two still together? Is it true about Joyce Billy's baby? She smiled, waved, moved toward the entrance with the practiced grace Yuna had drilled into her. Inside her purse, her phone buzzed. A message from Don. I love you. Don't be a hero. Just survive. She texted back. I love you too. Now let's end this. Somewhere in the parking garage, Emmanuel was waiting. Somewhere in the gala, Jinho's people were moving into position. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the cameras, Don Montano was preparing to show Seoul exactly what kind of monster he could be when someone threatened the woman he loved. Hafsat walked into the ballroom, and the war began. Thanks for watching. Please like, comments, and subscribe.